Okay. Hi, everybody. Give everyone a minute to arrive. Okay, we're going to get started, and we are on chapter 6 of Lights Along the Way, Mesilat Yesharim, written by Rabbi Tursky in our joint learning. And we are on page 106, chapter 6. And this is called Bibeur Midat Hazrizut. That means clarifying the trait of zurizut. What is zurizut? So we're going to look into it. As a reminder, when we're following along, first we read the original text from Rabbi Chaim Luzzatto, and we give our own interpretation. We read what Rabbi Tursky with a Hasidic approach brings, and we discuss. And we're going to continue to go through the book this way, and then we will go back to Shar HaBitachon, the gate of trust, which we feel like is the perfect component and complement to the Mesilat Yesharim. And we will bring in the gate of trust very, very often. And we're also going to be talking, of course, how all this relates to our health and wellness journey. But a health and wellness journey is about elevating the body to do your divine work and your divine will and your divine soul. And so if we are only out for purely the aesthetic gains, then it's going to be a very short-lived and not fulfilling or meaningful process. And so by elevating this is the reason we have a body, and the reason it's a mitzvah and a commandment to take care of our body is because it's elevating the basics of self-discipline, of self-awareness that's needed in order to elevate to higher levels of consciousness. So the Hebrew word is zurizut is not easily translated. The word zeal might be appropriate, except that it is a community associated with the word zealot. Hence, it carries that flavor of fanaticism and intolerance. But zurizut is a totally benign term. Zurizut connotes an attitude of devotion, enthusiasm, diligence, agility, and fervor, especially in the relationship of doing the divine will. And it indicates an overwhelming willingness and readiness to accomplish the divine will. And so this is very important when we're talking about everything in life, starting with your health and wellness, going on to all your relationships, going on to your relationship with Hashem, of course. And why? Because if your attitude isn't enthusiastic, and if your attitude isn't willing and ready, then it's going to be very hard to take any action, because there's always limiting beliefs, and there's always things that get in the way. And there's always excuses and circumstances and a million reasons why not to. And so when we bring enthusiasm, we feel like we can overcome anything. When you're really enthusiastic about something, all of those limitations feel small and very easy to overcome, versus when you're not really motivated to do something, everything feels like a super huge stumbling block. Zurizut is perhaps best defined in an attitude the Talmud describes to the patriarch Abraham, who was commanded by God to offer his beloved son Isaac as a sacrifice. The Torah states that Abraham arose early in the morning. Although he was about to lose a child from whom he had prayed, who was given him in an advanced age, Abraham did not delay in order to enjoy just a few more hours with his son, but rather arose at the crack of dawn, eager to carry out the divine command. This is what zurizut is all about. And as much as no single word accurately conveys the message, the meaning of zurizut, I choose to retain the Hebrew and ask the reader to think all the positive terms listed above that are contained in this single word. So we're going to go into now what the Ramchal, the original text, Rabbi Chaim Luzzatto, says about this midah of zurizut. And before we talk about how to accomplish it in future chapters, we really need to clarify what the mindset is that we're discussing. Zurizut follows watchfulness. And we said watchfulness is what we modern days called increasing and expanding self-awareness. So zurizut follows increasing and expanding self-awareness, because whereas this increasing self-awareness relates to avoiding negative things that can happen, zurizut leads to the performance of positive mitzvot. Avoid evil, do good, as it says in Psalms. That's why we discussed expanding our self-awareness first. It's because we're avoiding evil, and now we're going to talk about doing good. As a rule, one must first shun evil and then seek to do good. It makes no sense to put on fine clothing before you clean yourself. It is no point in trying to elevate yourself spiritually while you're engaged in behavior that's morally based. However, one may argue that a positive deed is the best method to extricate yourself from negative behavior, that a tiny bit of light can banish a great deal of darkness. The verse in Psalm cited could also be read as avoid evil by doing good. Indeed, Rabbi Hazrizut said that the reason one should not sin is not because it is forbidden, but rather one should be so occupied doing what one should be doing, who really has time for sin? At any rate, even the former interpretation does not mean that one must be completely free of sin before doing mitzvot, but that one should at least be in the process of divesting oneself of objectionable acts, working towards a goal of total observance. Now, this is super relevant to also our health and wellness journey, because when we are increasing our vegetables, we're drinking more water, maybe we're moving more. If we're not decreasing the unhealthy behaviors, having too much alcohol, having too much processed foods or sugars, or these kind of things, then what's going to happen is we're going to continue to not move forward. And so there has to be movement. There has to be an increased awareness. This is helpful. This isn't helpful, before we can really put a lot of motivation and action into doing more good. Why? Because we know what happens when you're putting effort in and you're not seeing any results and you're not seeing any outcome at all and you're not feeling better, you give up. And so when we're in this relationship with Hashem, if you know, put it into a relationship with a person, if you feel like you're making so many efforts in this relationship, but at the same time, maybe you're being like super disrespectful, or you're really not speaking nicely, all the good things that you're doing aren't necessarily going to be able to be felt, because they're going to be felt instead as, as a negative. Okay. Sorry, just seeing who wanted to come into the room. Okay. Let's continue. Just as it requires vast intelligence and a great deal of foresight to avoid entrapment by the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, these are essential to acquire mitzvot. Just as the Yetzer Hara plots to snare a person into sin, he similarly tries to prevent him from doing good. And if one is weak and indolent in their performance, he may remain devoid of these mitzvot. So he's saying there's another level here. Anytime we want to be doing something good, the evil inclination is going to put up roadblocks. And so if you're running up a hill and you don't step on the gas and get some momentum going forward, every single increase in the incline of difficulty is just going to slow you down so much to let you stop. But if you have a much more running start, it'll have to get really, really difficult before you get slowed down to a stop. Okay, because something in motion stays in motion unless acted on by an outside force. And we are always being acted on by an outside force. And so we need to be constantly increasing our motivation, our emotion, our zurizut, our enthusiasm for this relationship, our enthusiasm and readiness to serve. And I think in today's generation, you really have no better example. There are so many people, whether they're volunteering for Hatzalah, or they're volunteering for Magen David Adom, or they're volunteering to babysit someone's kids who needs a break because their husband is serving, or they're serving, or in America, they are zurizut, going to collect charity for families. And you see people, you can apply this also to your health. You can be zurizut to go do the healthy shopping, to go do the things that you need to do, because that healthy body is necessary in order to do all those other things, and it's what we want to do, zurizut. Okay. The measure of one's zurizut is indicative of one's degree of devotion to God. The Talmud said, do his will as though it were your own. If a person has a strong desire for something, he may move heaven and earth to get it. He is likely to go after the object of his desire with much zeal and not be apt to let anything stand in his way. This is how we should behave in doing the divine will. It is related on the night following the close of Passover, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev would sit at the window all night, looking anxiously for the first sign of dawn, at which time he would be permitted to put on tefillin. Having been deprived of this mitzvah for 8 days of the festival, he longed for it, that someone would be separated from his beloved. It is the characteristic of the Rabbi Levi Yitzchak that at the conclusion of the Yom Kippur fast, while others hurried to satisfy their hunger, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak studied the laws of Sukkah in preparation for the approaching festival. His hunger for the mitzvah was surpassed his physical hunger. And I think, hi, Shlamit. Thank you so much for joining me on your lunch break. We are on page 108 of the book. And we're talking about this midah of zurizut. So let's just continue with just thinking about this zurizut, that it's like your beloved, that you've been separated. And so when you wake up in the morning, you know, and they talk about your morning routine, how you start your day and how important that is. If you say modeh ani and you take a minute and you're grateful, you do a gratitude exercise and you hop out of bed full of positivity and gratitude, that's zurizut, that readiness and willingness to face a new day. But we don't always wake up like that. Okay, sometimes we wake up feeling lethargic, feeling of poor energy, feeling overwhelmed. What I want to bring here, what he's talking about is first, right? Don't do bad, avoid bad, do good. When you wake up in one of those negative states, don't hop out of bed super fast. Take a minute, calm yourself, center yourself, ground yourself, be kind and compassionate to yourself. Because when you do that, you're actually readying yourself for zurizut. Zurizut isn't always to force your way to do something, to be so type A that you hold yourself hostage to do the good. It starts with the good you do to yourself when you're compassionate, when you don't feel the motivation. How do I treat myself when I don't feel the motivation? Okay. One of our great Torah personalities was able to embody zurizut because of the will of God was primary, and their own will was less than secondary. The Talmud relates Rabbi Abahu, who had an interpreter who explained his sermons in the lay language to the public. Their interpreter's wife boasted to Rabbi Abahu's wife, "My husband is every bit as learned and original as yours. He humbles himself to function as an interpreter because of intense humility." Rabbi Abahu's wife told her husband about the interpreter's wife's chutzpah, and he responded, "What difference does it make who is more brilliant? The end result is that between the two of us, the divine teachings are conveyed to the populace, and that's what matters. The divine will is all that counts." Hi, Ruth. We are on page 108 at the bottom of the page. It's only when our own will predominates that we lack zurizut. And I think this is true across our relationships, across our relationship with our health, our relationship with our body, our relationship with the divine will, right? The more that what I want, my immediate gratification is first, the harder it is to feel excited to do something that somebody else wants, right? Or something that's good for the future me, or good for my family, or good for my community, or good for my friends, or good for my relationship with God. And the more that we work on that impulsivity and we're able to breathe and be kind and make space for the divine will and see how much gratitude and appreciation and bitachon that we have, again, we're able to move forward in a better way. And we find that motivation comes to be of service. Just that we're on page 109. Just as the nature of an object is to remain at rest, so is the nature of a person. As a physical entity to be at rest and not exert oneself, one who wishes to merit doing divine service must therefore overcome the natural inclination. Because if he follows his natural tendency, he cannot succeed. The Torah exhorts us, strengthen yourself and be courageous to observe and fulfill the Torah. This is a pasuk from Yoshua, and in fact, Yoshua was told chazak ve'amatz 10 separate times. This is why Solomon repeatedly warns against the evil and ruin of laziness. Just a little more sleep, a little more sleep, a little more folding the hands, and your poverty is suddenly upon you. Although the indolent person is not actively evil, his passivity is destructive. And so when people talk about their morning routine or getting up early or incorporating physical movement into your morning routine, whether it's a gentle somatic healing, a more intense exercise, a walk outdoors, when you actually physically move your body in the morning, you actually move your soul, you move the blood through the body, and you wake up your brain, you wake up your heart, and you're actually able to perform better throughout the entire day on all levels. So starting your day with some form of active activity, and also at other times, even and especially people who need to rest more, he's not saying don't rest and don't sleep. He's saying that sleep, not of processing, not of recuperating, not of recovering, not of restoration, but the sleep of lack of motivation, the sleep of scrolling endlessly on social media, the sleep of losing ourselves in hours of television, the sleep of silencing our brain and sitting too long and quieting our body. Okay. We're going to continue. If we look at the human being as a composite of a physical body and a spirit, the role of zurizut in development of spirituality becomes obvious. The natural state of the physical body, like any other object in the world, is inertia, non-movement. Movement requires an expenditure of energy, overcoming the natural state. Any development of the spirit requires work. The natural appetites of hunger and thirst cause enough discomfort to overcome the inertia so that a person is moved to seek food and water. The discomfort of cold will cause him to clothe himself and seek shelter from the elements. However, in the absence of discomfort, the natural inertia will prevail. If one observes the behavior of a person who has taken heroin, for example, you see the result of a human who is without discomfort. Heroin removes all drives. And with the uninterrupted use of the drug, a person will die of dehydration and starvation since there is no hunger or thirst to overcome the inertia. And as much as a person has spiritual needs, a lack of spirituality will also result in discomfort. However, whereas deprivation of food and water causes a specific and even intense sensation of hunger and thirst, deprivation of spiritual nourishment causes a vague sense of discontent. A person feels unhappy, but in contrast to hunger and thirst, he doesn't know just what he's lacking. This may be because his hunger or thirst occurs soon after birth, whereas the spiritual needs do not arise until the person is well along in life. Since a person is often unable to identify what he is lacking spiritually, he tries to remedy that discomfort by other means, accumulating wealth, alcohol, tranquilizers, drugs, or food. Indeed, this is the way many addictions develop. And this is why our physical health journey is really just the building block foundation of our spiritual journey. The more that we notice our cravings and we notice our desires, and we notice our overeating, and we increase that watchful self-loving awareness, the more that we'll also be able to ready ourselves and feel motivated and excited and enthusiastic about healthy behaviors, including spiritual behaviors that are going to make us feel spiritually satisfied every single day. When we say any after blessing on food in the Jewish culture, we say, may I be satisfied, because it doesn't matter how much you eat. It is a divine blessing whether or not you're satisfied. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It's a divine blessing whether or not you're satisfied with what you have. It doesn't matter how many people you have to love or be in relationship with in your life. If you're not have the blessing of satisfaction, it's never going to feel like enough. And so we have to put that effort to cultivate this sense of momentum and motivation and getting over that inertia. But we have to ask God to help us the rest of the way, to help us then be satisfied and ready ourselves to continue to do good and continue that sense of motivation. Solomon portrays the evil of indolence as follows. I passed by the field of a lazy man and by the vineyard of a foolish person, and they were overgrown with thorns, covered with weeds. In addition to its obvious meaning, the sages interpret this overgrowth of thorns and weeds as referring to a distortion of judgment and values. The harmful consequences of indolence may not appear suddenly, but develop gradually. Lack of diligence in learning leads to deficiency in knowledge and then to faulty thinking, ultimately resulting into the perversion of truth, so that one sees is what is true and as false, and what is false as true. And I think we all see this, especially when it comes to habit formation and when it comes to how we live our lives on an everyday basis. If we are not pruning and planting seeds and cultivating the garden of our life, our body, and our health, our lifestyle, then there are a lot of weeds that come up from the culture surrounding us, from mistakes in our thinking that then become rooted and bloom into thorns and weeds and problems. We all have room to improve. And I'm talking to myself as much to all of you guys. The more and more we learn these things, the more and the more I learn bitachon, I really start to see, wow, that was totally not a bitachon mindset I had, about this thing in my past that happened, or this thing that's about to happen in my future. And that the work you're doing right now is the pruning and the development of your garden. But remember, the day you plant the seed is not the day you're going to eat the fruit. And so we need zurizut to overcome that inertia, to make sure that we keep toiling the soil, we keep planting, we keep gardening, so that we're able to enjoy all the fruits of our labor eventually. And then we can also enjoy the process, because when you're enthusiastic and you believe with 100% certainty, with bitachon, that the outcome is coming and that you will be rewarded, and that this is a relationship worth investing in, you feel God's appreciation and gratitude for the blessings in your life every day, starting with your physical body and every cell, nerve, function, organ, sensation is a gift and a blessing to be grateful for. Again, it continues to create enthusiasm to do our part in this relationship. Failure to plow, till, water, weed will result in the growth of thorns and weeds rather than fruits and vegetables. While these consequences of indolence are bad enough, it might be even worse if the foolish person thinks that the wild growths are edible foods instead of the poison that is hurting them through ingesting it. A person who fails because of laziness may not see his laziness as being the cause. He may attribute his failure to other factors. He may think that he's dull or just not smart enough, or, he has this problem or this problem, and he resigns himself to poor achievement. He may place the blame for his failure on others, which may result in severe deterioration of interpersonal relationships, as it generates anger against those whom he holds responsible for his difficulties. These distortions of judgment, complicated by persisting indolence, may eventually lead to a disastrous outcome. So I see we have more and more people joining without video. It's great. Let me just catch you up where we are. We are on the top of page 111, and we're talking about clarifying this trait of enthusiasm, zurizut, readiness, motivation, excitement for action. And we're talking about how when we lack this, the natural laziness of a person really is going to create bigger and bigger expanding problems in their life, as if all of our life is a garden, and with our good behavior, we're able to plant seeds. And even if we've done some good actions in the past, if we're not active and watchful and enthusiastic about taking care of that garden, then we're going to have a lot of weeds and growths. And so we need to be constantly pruning and checking with our bitachon and our mindset to make sure that our garden is going to grow beautifully as we continue to plant and cultivate. And we said that he talks again and again and again here about the physical body is the mashal. The same way, this is the way God created your body. If you don't wake up early and move your body and do work on your mindset first thing every morning and say moda ani with gratitude, and then physically move your body, you will have less energy, momentum, enthusiasm for your zurizut for the rest of the day. So the physical body is really the way that was created, is a mashal, is an allegory for the way our spiritual levels also work. Okay, we often see that a person may be aware of his obligations and may know what's incumbent upon him to do in the divine service, yet he neglects it, right? We've all been there. Not because of a lack of intelligence, and not only because of laziness, but only because his indolence is dominant. And we're going to say again that laziness is very sneaky. We all can get stuck scrolling social media, in a good book, reading an article, doing something that doesn't need to be done. That's just like we're kind of sitting there and it's right in front of us. And so we're doing it, or just feeling mentally, emotionally, physically exhausted from all the weeds and thorns that we've allowed to grow in our garden that we haven't been taken care of. And then we feel, like he said, it increases and increases the drain on a person, and it becomes harder and harder to create that enthusiasm and that readiness and that motivation to overcome that problem. And the other thing that he mentioned at the beginning is that the way Hashem often gifts us momentum is through pain. We only go out and get food and water when we're hungry and thirsty. And he talked about someone who has heroin will die of starvation and dehydration because the heroin numbs all needs. And so they will not move themselves to get food and water, and they will die. And that's crazy to think that sometimes the discomfort that we get is really to move us and to help us to develop zurizut again and to feel motivated for change. And we always want to be self-motivated, so we don't need to be motivated by these really hard experiences, which are in the end for our benefit, but are not pleasant in the meantime. Okay. He will come up with a myriad of excuses and quote even scripture and Talmud to present logical arguments to support these weeds and poor thinking. And this causes him to turn a deaf ear to constructive criticism. Solomon says a lazy person thinks himself wiser than 7 sages. And indeed, he considers everyone else a fool while he is wise. The resistance to take action results in countless rationalizations, with the indolent person convincing himself of their truth. The capacity to rationalize is widespread and occurs even in people who are not manifestly lazy. The function of rationalization is to permit the individual to maintain the status quo. It is the most prominent in an alcoholic who continues his destructive drinking despite incontrovertible evidence of the harm he's doing to himself and others. But we see this in our relationship with all the time. We are in denial, and we tell ourselves all the time rationalizations why it's okay that we eat the quantity or quality of food that isn't serving us, reflecting many years of destructive drinking. He says, I never took a drink unless I was convinced it was the right thing to do at the time. Rationalization, whether it occurs in an indolent person or an alcoholic or in a normal individual, is invariably disadvantageous. By definition, a rationalization is giving logical reasons in the place of a true reason. And since self-deceptive rationalization is harmful, deluding oneself cannot but result in adverse consequences. The more logical the rationalization, the more dangerous it is, because it's more likely to be mistaken for the truth. Hence, people of greater intelligence are much more likely to be more expert at rationalization. Any psychotherapist will testify that the most sophisticated patients are apt to be the most difficult to treat because they believe most strongly in their own lies. And we all know this. I have to put my hand up here, right? Like we all are tricking ourselves all the time and deluding ourselves and not putting effort in areas that we should. Because our brain is always rationalizing why we should do as little effort as possible and conserve energy and conserve things for ourselves. But that's the opposite of what we're put here to do. And so before you get all self-critical on yourself, hear that it's being acknowledged how hard this is. Like this is divine service. Every time you overcome your own rationalizations, you're doing divine blessed service. You're doing something meaningful. You're doing something fulfilling. And every time you teach your kids to do the same, you're giving them a legacy of meaning and fulfillment. And it's very important. A principle that experience has proven valid is that any desire which tends to ease one's burdens should be considered suspect. While such desires may be correct, it is likely they originate from the Yetzer Hara and should be scrutinized most carefully. Oh, this is a hard one, right? If to getting that drink in the evening makes everything just a little bit more okay, I should question and just double check that this is a flower sprouting and not a weed that needs to be pulled. And this is really true. However, the more that you study bitachon and you're constantly implementing zurizut and actively pursuing good things to plant, he said earlier in this chapter, for anybody who's coming in late, that one of the interpretations of, avoid bad, do good is when avoid bad by doing good, by being so busy planting really good seeds and taking care of your garden that the weeds don't have as much time to come in and take root, because you're constantly toiling the soil and you're constantly working on your growth and you're constantly working on your skills. And so this is what you guys are doing. So great job, keep going. And you can increase your daily learning and all kinds of things that you're doing by also going back and watching previous episodes of Shar B'Tachon again. The alarm clock rings in the morning, and as the person awakens, he realizes he has an early appointment. He then begins to reflect on the importance of keeping that appointment. Perhaps the whole thing was a mistake. It's not really necessary at all. He begins to weigh the pros, the cons. The Ramachal cautions against arguments in favor of not keeping the appointment, which would then permit the person to stay in bed longer, are highly suspect of being rationalizations. They are generated by the desire to remain in bed, and even if the person convinces himself of their validity, he is likely to later regret his decision when he discovers that his failure to keep the appointment was to his great disadvantage. A chassid once asked the Rebbe of Rizin for guidance to a proper conduct. One cannot always have a recourse to the Shulchan Aruch, nor is it possible for all problems to be addressed in the Shulchan Aruch. The Rabbi Rizin responded, do what tightrope walker does. The way he maintains his delicate balance is that when he feels himself drawn to one side, he leads a little bit to the other side. When you feel yourself tempted to do something, lean a little bit towards the other side. And as you process the pros and cons for any proposed action that would satisfy your desire, give greater credibility to the argument against gratification. Those that are for gratification are likely to be rationalizations. And again, we have to be really careful because the Yetzer Hara is super tricky. And sometimes he gets us to be very harsh and rationalize not doing good because we're afraid we're going to do something bad. And if you've had a really poor night's sleep, maybe you need to stay in bed and you need to consciously move that appointment. And that's different than rationalizing canceling the appointment. And this is why we had to talk about expanding self-awareness first. Because when we run, and we do, and we're not being self-aware, we're much more likely to end up in avoidance and end up giving up and end up burned out and end up exhausted, which is that state of laziness we're trying to avoid in the first place. And so we have to first continue to increase our watchful self-awareness, expanding our self-awareness, and at the same time, allowing our increased enthusiasm to do good. The scripture describes heavenly angels as having zurizut, to do God's will, acting swiftly as streaks of lightning. While a person and a human being is not an angel, his aspiration should be to emulate their zurizut. As King David said, I was quick and I did not hesitate in observing your mitzvot. Why the reference to angels? The human being is a composite of a physical body, which is very much akin to that of any beast or any animal, and very much physical desires, and a neshama, a divine spirit, which is akin to an angel. Animals are not faulted for following all their physical temptations, because that is the natural point of an animal. Nor can angels in truth be praiseworthy for their unrestrained devotion and execution of the divine bidding, since there is nothing to impede their doing so. It is perhaps a mistake to speak of the angels as being spiritual, since all they are is pure spirit. It is the human being whose physical nature generally draws him away from the divine bidding, who may be considered spiritual when he allows the angelic component of his being rather than the animal component to determine his behavior. The angelic quality of his zurizut, when exercised by man, is therefore an important step towards spirituality. And that is the end of chapter 6 for today. So let's discuss this idea that every time we work on overcoming all the physical temptations, and we do so, and we take care of our mental and physical health with care as part of the divine will, and focusing on elevating the body and the daily needs that we have by not overeating and over drinking and over exercising or oversleeping, but working on moderation and then moving our obsession with the physical to spiritual work, to how can I be of service? What does God want for me today? What can I do for you, God, easily and happily? What can I do? Then we are really doing what we want, that between Bitachon and between Mesilat Yesharim and the concept that we learned today. So everybody, feel free to come back on video, feel free to unmute yourself. I'd love to hear what your thoughts were on today's chapter and this concept of what zurizut is.
You cut my video off.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's see. There you go. If you want to be on video, I sent you a request.
Thank you.
So what are your thoughts on zurizut?
What was the question?
What are your thoughts on this midah of zurizut, of enthusiastic work on the divine will, and how he keeps talking about how it has a lot to do with how we treat our body and how we act with our body?
I think it was a very nice point you said about getting up early in the morning and moving the body and everything. I've just been in hospital with my mother-in-law. She's been in bed for like a few days in the hospital. Now she can't go from the chair to the bed. We in terrible trouble. We can't find a metapele. We can't lift her to put her into bed and take her out, because the whole time she was in hospital, they just left her in the bed. They didn't sit her out. They didn't do anything. And now she can't do anything. So it really is important to move in the morning and get to not sit around. And we can see the results. Like, we was completely stuck. We don't know how to I don't know how to help her. She's come home now, and we can't even get her into bed. So it's a real point that you said, it's really good to get up in the morning and walk around and do a bit of exercise.
So can I just say that? So I resonate a lot. Is that Ruth?
Yes.
Yeah.
That resonated with me. I was about to say something similar. God forbid, I'm not in hospital. I've been in hospital. I know what it's like, especially now. I don't know, it seems to be less one-on-one care than there ever has been. They just sort of, they're overworked and there's not enough staff. I had shingles and COVID and a strep throat last week. So it was a real setback in terms of, like, I was on track with lots of goals. And partly, I had to use a lot of mindset work to get myself back in the zone of not getting depressed, and not because I live on my own, not to have like blame for, oh, this person didn't call and that person can't get hold of me and I'm all by myself, and blaming God, like, how come I ended up by myself and all these things. So I have to, first of all, create the positive mindset of joy, of simcha, of gratitude. And that's like, once you get in that zone, then you're like, okay, what can I do from here? And then this is what I did with myself. I'm not saying anybody else, maybe other people have different ways, but for me, even the gentlest movement, it starts off with the smallest thing. Like for me, it's like Kundalini movement, which means like just circling with the hips, just getting that juice, it's flowing, just starting to feel your body again. And when you've been really ill, you can't start from A and go to Z. You've got to go from A to B. A to B is enough. Like, even if she's gently doing rocking, just to feel into her body a little bit, whatever little exercise you can find on YouTube. I don't know if you're online or if your mum's online. So much is on YouTube, or whatever you search for, gentle exercises for rehab of hips, something. There's always something you can find that I can do that one thing. And it's just like those little steps are the way to freedom. It feels like, so discouraging. I was here and now I'm all the way back at the bottom. But actually you're not, because your muscle memory's there. And thank God if your mum walked before, please God she'll walk again. It's just in your mind, it can be so depressing to have gone all the way down to, like, snakes and ladders, and you're like whoosh all the way at the bottom when you were on a number 60 or something. And it's so daunting. And actually, I found that it's those little steps that are the redemption. It's like just believing in yourself and asking God to help you, and surrendering, saying, like, I know I'm here. And I know I want to get to there, but today I'm just going to even ask God to help me, guide me to get to B. And once you're in B, you're kind of not in that zone anymore. You're like, okay, halfway normal. It just feels more like a mensch, You feel more like a mensch. And then your mindset starts to click in as well. And you'll feel like a little bit more smiling because you've maybe met people, or if you went out for a tiny little walk up and down the street, you met somebody and smiled at them, something, little things. It's hard. So when I was going to say that the zurizut part for me was very resonant, because number one, the health doesn't go overnight. I feel with me, it's a sort of, I allowed things to go too far. I burned out. I was doing too many things for too many people and not saying no and not boundarying my health. and not going to bed on time, or, you know, I wasn't really taking care of myself in the way I should have been. So that was a warning sign. And I have to look at my patterns of behavior there. And then the second thing is that being so ill, which I was, it's difficult to understand now because I feel so healthy now, thank God, Baruch Hashem. But when I was so ill, that was a huge wake-up call to me. And in fact, I then decided, okay, I'm going to cut out, because I felt so ill, I couldn't eat, I had no appetite. I'm like, since I have no appetite, I'm going to start again, kickstart again, cutting out the sugar, cutting out the wheat. Everything else fine. I'm going to have my chicken, my fish, my salads, my veg, maybe little bits in here and there. But I've just become more careful about what I eat. And even in a few days, in the space of a few days, I am actually feeling a lot better. The energy is coming back. Sugar is a huge killer of your mood. It makes you feel amazing in the moment, and then 10 minutes later, you're dead. It's like it's not good for you. So I'm being a little more on my game because I got so ill. So
exactly what he said here is we don't want to ask God for the hunger and the thirst to get us to go take it, to go eat a meal and drink something. Like, we want to create a watchfulness first, right? And then a zurizut and a readiness to do things the right way so that we take care of ourselves. And it sounds like you had a lot of weeds and things that came up that you felt like you were doing the right thing at the time. That weed was a total rationalization. I'm doing so much good. I'm taking care of everybody, right? I'm being so much zurizut. And sometimes we only recognize that after God wakes us up.
Yeah. And having said that, I wouldn't mind like any advice that you've got for me on the fact that now, do you know, when you've been ill for a week, everything just goes. And now I'm overwhelmed. I've got all this work pile, and I've got an art exhibition that's supposed to be on next Sunday. Haven't organized any of my prices or products or anything like that. I don't even know where to start. I feel so overwhelmed. And so today I just went out all day just to not face it. Came back home this evening thinking, I think I'll wait till tomorrow. And it's true, like all the things that I was excited and enthusiastic about before have suddenly taken on a new energy of they're monsters and they're scaring me and I just want to hide in the duvet now. So I will appreciate any feedback on that.
1 second, I'm just writing a note.
Me, my own advice, saying just like one thing at a time, but even like the smallest thing is scaring me right
But
now.
it's, I find that for me then, the first is just gathering my tools. Like when the house is super messy, I can't even think of where to start. But if I gather my tools, if I like go get a bucket and I get the soap and I get, you know, the scrub brushes and I get the stuff, you look at the stuff and it creates an enthusiasm. Ooh, I want to use this stuff, right? Like, ooh, like let's use the magic sponge and let's do the counter. And then the counter gets clean and you're like, oh, the sink needs to get clean. Now it doesn't match the counter, right? And all of a sudden you have like the positive momentum. So by taking care of your body, that's kind of getting your first tool ready.
True.
And you get a good night's sleep. And then you just you sit down with a list of everything you have to do. And that's your next tool. And you're like, okay, first, let's just organize the list. That's a tool.
Okay. Fair enough. So today being my day off was actually a tool and a step in the right direction. And it's okay to not jump straight in, you're saying. And then making it is also a tool. I've actually got a session with my coach tomorrow morning. So that's also a tool. I've got an ADHD coach. She's amazing. If anybody needs an ADHD coach, she's my new.
Yeah, it's really, really important. And getting your body ready is always the first tool, because if you want to go clean the kitchen and you haven't organized all your tools, then you're back and forth and you feel overwhelmed and lost and disorganized, and everything, instead of being enthusiastic, kind of wears you down because you're like, oh, and I don't have what I need. But when you take care of your body first every day and you prioritize your health, you really have the number one tool that no one can ever take from you.
Actually, do you know what the best tool was? Number one, coming to this class. And actually that's number two, because number one, I decided, you know, I used to do a Shara B'tachon class, and I just given it up because it was so much to organize, and I was doing it every day and it just got too much. So then I started doing it every week and that got too much. So I started doing voice notes instead of a whole class like this. And then it was Yom Tov and this and that, and I was ill, and then I stopped. So I said, you know what, I'll just stop overthinking it and just do a voice note this morning. So I went back to Shah Bitachon. I did a 5-second, 5-minute voice note, and it hit straight home. It was exactly what I needed to hear. It was so nice. So I think Rabbi Achia, he's the dude. He is the dude. It's like, this is a tool. This is such a good tool.
It is. It's the best tool. And really, it's necessary for that health and wellness, because for you to take the day and put yourself together and see the good in the getting sick and the other side, and to appreciate all the value that came out of that very difficult experience, takes bitachon, takes that underlying belief that God is good and God's crazy about you, and he would only do that if it was for your good.
Yeah. And also just believing that if I'm a part of God, then how can I be bad? Like, I don't have to judge myself or shame myself that I got sick. Just, it happened. Okay, listen, it was part of God's plan. Here I am right now. That's also part of God's plan. How can that be bad? And just take it from here, wherever I am, that's where you start.
Beautiful. I'm very sad we will not be having class next week, but for good reason. I'm going to be on the Momentum trip on my way home. And so I will be
one of the facilitators.
What's a Momentum trip?
Momentum is a group of women that come from all over English-speaking countries to Israel and meet up with Israelis. And they take different tours together to get to know Israel, to get to know the people of Israel, to connect to 7 Jewish values. Since the war, they're unity missions. So they're doing volunteer work and going to see, the historical important remnants of October.
Can bring them here. Can bring them up here.
Where are you?
In Maalot, in the north.
Are you? I don't think they're going to the north. I know I have the itinerary. We're not going to the north, but I don't make the itinerary. I'm just one madricha among many on the trip. But
that would be nice to be a madricha on a trip like that.
I'd love to join. I'd love to be involved in that. I've tried a couple of times, but I think it's difficult because in England they've not got a very active presence from London for some reason.
They're just always looking for leaders to create a community.
I'd be happy to help out if you need any help.
Oh, thank you. I don't make any of the logistics decisions. I show where they're telling me, and I do my job. I'm a volunteer. But if you want to start a chapter in America, I mean, this is mostly for in England for people from Chul to come here and have a experience. And but it's a fabulous organization, and they do amazing things for women. And the idea is it's basically birthright for women. And so it's going to be my first time going to the kibbutzim that were destroyed, being at the Nova Festival, my second time hearing direct testimony. And we're also going to meet with, people who've lost chayalim, as my friends have. We'll be at Har Herzl. So it's going to be a very emotional week. And but I know that a lot of good is going to come out of that pain. It's going to make us thirsty. It's going to make us hungry for spirituality, for Mashiach, for important changes, for achdut and unity amongst the Jewish people. So I'm looking forward to it, even though it's going to be challenging. And I look forward to in 2 weeks telling you guys about the trip as well. You're
going to be amazing, Lily. The people who go with you are very lucky.
Tell them from Thank you. I'm on the bus, so I'm in charge of one of the buses and all their downtime framing, where they're going between all the speakers and all the other big people that they're going to be hearing from. I'm the trip mom. I'm the mommy. So do my best. Have a great week, guys. Thank you so much for learning with me, for being here. I know this gives me chizuk every single week learning with you guys. I walk away learning something from you guys. I really thought, Ruth, what you shared was so powerful. It's just so true. We should never think that we're just getting up and moving. And if we don't see an aesthetic result we want right away, that's the point. The point is every single day we get to move as a gift, because when you don't move, you don't get to move. And it's really powerful. And Shlomi, I'm so happy you're feeling better and that you're back here with us, and that you find.
Can I have that number of the ADHD coach? You said you're giving the number.
But in the Bitachon group.
You and what is that all right, Lily? Would you mind? I
Of
can
course, right? Like this bitachon, nobody can take business from anybody else. I'm not an ADHD coach. Put it in the group, and everybody.
Shulamit said you had a number of somebody.
She's gonna put it in the WhatsApp group. Oh, you Ruth is
I'm
not
not in the WhatsApp. How'd you get onto the WhatsApp?
I emailed you the link. I will email it again.
I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to do it. I have to wait till my son comes home next week. I can't do things like that.
Okay, so you got to have your son add. You know what you can do? Email me your phone number, and I can add you to the group.
I'll tell
Okay.
you what I'll do. I'll drop it in the group, and if you and Lily are in touch on the phone or something, then maybe Lily and you can.
I will forward you the number, but email me your phone number, and then I will
Just
add.
don't take her on Monday mornings because that's my time.
Which day?
Monday.
Have a wonderful week.
Don't take that.
Bye.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
You were so
Thank
inspirational.
you, Lily. Thank you, Lily. Thank you, everybody. Bye.